Great American rugby. Rugby is life and life is great. My name is Lance and today I have Dallen Stanford on the live. This is a big one for me. This is it right here. This is one of them for me, right? Dallen has been the voice of rugby in the United States for a very long time, lending his voice for world rugby events, sevens, 15s, PR sevens, national championships, freetail sevens. Goodness gracious. Rugby Town, you name a tournament, Dallen Stanford's voice has touched the microphone, has been the soundtrack for some of the great action we've seen in the United States over the last number of years. Not only is Dallen an announcer that does great work in the game of rugby, but he also wore the colors representing the United States. And surprise, surprise, he's the man that wears the gloves. Shout out to Smiley. Get your popcorn ready. This is going to be one of those. Man, this is a hype one for me. Let's go. Slippery eel. The catchphrases. The catchphrases is crazy.
Hello, my friend.
How we doing today, Dallen?
Marvelous, marvelous. You saw I'm wearing a colorful shirt just for you, my friend.
I appreciate that. I like when they dress to impress, man. Thank you so much. First thing is, how's everything going, man? What you got going on now?
Very good, my friend. Very good. We had a crazy start to the year with the wildfires in Los Angeles, but everything has kind of, been okay since then. We were lucky, obviously some people weren't. They lost so many things. So obviously thoughts with everybody else that was affected by it. But personally, we did get out of town. We're back. Major League Rugby's kicked off. So we're loving that. Being back in the booth, actually, which is great, Lon. So the studios have basically, there's one in Austin and one in Indianapolis. And so I used to be able to fly across to the East Coast when I lived there, but now back in LA. So I'm working out of the Austin studio, which has been good, and covering some games in San Diego. So really good to get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, you was the voice for this Miami game that just happened, right?
Oh, it was honestly the craziest finish I've ever seen. Like I would. That's why it's crazy to be a rugby coach these days because the game was won. Miami did such a good job to come back and win the game. So as a commentator, you expecting the ball to be kicked out, and when it goes over the top, it's actually like it makes the game so exciting. As a commentator, you light up. You're like you obviously don't want to criticize the player that has kicked the ball accidentally. Well, kick the ball towards the team, but still, you just go with the live action. And we couldn't believe it. Our jaws dropped. I stood up for that last 2 minutes of the game, and the fact that it finished with a cross kick and a try and then a conversion, it was mental.
Let me tell you this. Being there was one of the most I it's hard to describe. Like
Yeah.
I'm here in South Florida. Miami's my local team. I support the guys. And the way that they lost and to be in the environment when it happened, it probably was one of the more heartbreaking things. The only thing that probably could have made it worse if it would have been like a team that had like 30 years established and I've been rocking with them since I was a child. That'd have been the only
Yes.
way that would have made it because anyway, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But it was a good day.
Yes.
Other than
Exactly.
that, it was a good day.
But I'll say this: I said the crowd looked awesome. You were there, right? The sunset was stunning. Like on camera, you could see that, which is amazing. And I love that they making this whole vibe. The Argentinian flair, I'm a big fan of. I got a chance to travel to Argentina to do the World Rugby Under 20 Championship. The people are amazing. They like do great barbecues or braais as we call them in South Africa. They love to have a few drinks, whether it's wine or beers. Bring the family together. And I think they're building the right atmosphere. I don't know. You were there. What a vibe, right?
They since they started, they've always had a barbecue sponsor or
Oh,
like a
that's
quality
cool.
meat provider
Yeah.
sponsor. So the barbecue and the grill is always going, right. They got the music, and I've been there since the beginning, and
Yeah.
I've seen incrementally how they've upgraded the environment, upgraded the field, where you have access to. Like when I
Mhm.
first got there, I'm Great American Rugby. I'm walking wherever I want. Now it's like, nah, you get a pass. This is section. This is section, which I'm perfectly fine with. But they've really
Yeah.
been Tomas is the guy who's been over it in operations, and they really
Mm.
like stepped it up a bit. And I can't wait to see the next,
Yeah.
progression, the next, couple of games, get through this season. But every week is always better. So
Yeah.
sunset was beautiful, but the sunset of that game was not. No.
No, no, it wasn't. But listen, I'm on the call again for the second Miami game, so that's great. So we'll see how that goes against Nola. And then this weekend I got San Diego playing away against Anthem Rugby, which will be interesting because San Diego, wow, the way they started under John Manenti in that first half,
Yeah.
Seattle were very good in the second, but that first half
Yeah.
they were unmatched.
and
Yeah.
and they're a dangerous team.
Yeah.
They four. I didn't know they four pack can grind you the way that they did. I thought Seattle would. We can't talk
Yeah, yeah,
MLR. We're
yeah.
talking Dallen Stanford. We're talking. We can get a whole conversation about that. But one of the things I've always wanted to know is what got you into commentating. I do want to talk about the beginning things that got you into rugby in general,
Yeah,
but it seems as though most people don't find a second life after the game. They play,
yeah.
they might coach, they might, play touch or things, but not many
Mm.
people play on a high level and then do something else that's on an equally high level. How did you get into announcing?
I would say I'm very lucky. I've been very lucky from the start, and I want to say it's really because of rugby, because of the community and the opportunities that the sport creates, which is unlike a lot of other sports. You know, a lot of American sports since I've come to America are very insular and they're based here. But as you know, rugby, you can, like, I arrived in America with a pair of rugby boots and I got a job. I got an old car given to me. I made 20 new friends, got a place to stay, all that sort of good stuff. So the interesting thing is I've never really planned to be a commentator, even though I obviously talk a mile a minute. My mom actually was like, she talks more than me when she was still alive, you know. So she's the original commentator. So we're very passionate people and love rugby, obsessed with the sport. So only when I got a chance to travel to New Zealand, I was the media manager for USA Rugby. So after I finished playing, I was still enthralled by the landscape of marketing and media. That's what I studied back at university in South Africa. So somebody said, well, you could work in media for USA Rugby and you can go on this tour, go to the Rugby World Cup 2011. I was with the team, like, I knew a lot of the players, that I just played with. They were playing for the US 15s team. So that was really cool. And then I got to the stadium, Westpac Stadium, and I heard the commentators. They were preparing. They were looking at the names. They asked me a few questions, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. That's their job. They get to talk about the game. Unbelievable." And so I was hooked. After that, then I was like, "How do I do that?" So I came back to the US, and randomly, the rugby club that I was playing with, Occidental College All Boys in LA. One of the guys, Patrick Guthrie, is one of the US legendary directors. And so he said, Dallen, and he did say to me, he said, as soon as you finish playing internationally, let me know when you're available. And I was available that next week. He flew me to Glendale, Colorado, and that's when 2012, started commentating for him for the very first time at Infinity Park. Loved it. I was sidelined at first, interviewing my friends who had just played, internationals or club rugby. And then he's like, okay, you did a good job sideline. Now I want to see if you have the chops to be the main play-by-play. And I was like, oh, what does that entail? Like, how does that work? And so I really learned on the job. I was obviously terrible at starting because I didn't know the thing about commentary, which is funny. You've got the game itself, which is live, and that I enjoyed, and it was decent at calling the game. But then you got the ins and outs, the broadcasting things, which I never studied. I didn't have a background in that, and that's the 10 seconds, which is like, it's 12:05 at Infinity Park. Be right back after the break with
Yeah,
highlights. Like those
yeah,
little bits, the ins and
yeah.
outs, which if you don't know anything about it, you just be like, we'll be back with the break. And you sound very flat. So all those kind of things learning on the job, really, it's been an intriguing journey. I've been very blessed because not many people get to travel the world, do a Rugby World Cup or do two Rugby World Cups and sevens and 15s, get paid to be in the hot seat and talk about the game, be excited about the game. So honestly, I'm so blessed.
You started in
Yeah.
2011. Man, you could have fooled me. I thought this was something you've been doing since
Yeah.
before you was playing. It was kind of something that was like maybe a backup plan, but you fell into it.
Lawrence, I will say this, and it's funny looking back now. You don't, again, you don't know your journey until you're in it, right? And my friends that I grew up with in South Africa, when I was like, 10 years old playing touch rugby, I would commentate the games while we played. So it was a natural thing. I'd literally be like commentating as we're going along, and people that was just normal, right? So they obviously were like, we knew you were going to be a commentator, like it was obvious at 10 years old. So it's funny that I didn't know that back at the time, but yes.
Let's talk about the beginnings, right? The humble
Yeah,
beginnings of Dallen. Born and raised South Africa. Which part? Which part of South Africa?
Cape Town, so most southern tip of Africa. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Cape Town born, rugby player extraordinary. Was rugby something you took ultra serious at the time? Did you have pursuits to try to play high levels? I'm not to age you, but
Yeah.
this is around the time professionalism. No, it isn't. This is after professionalism. What 95
Yeah,
ish?
94,
Not
95, exactly. Yeah. So I'm 45 now. So yeah, obviously on the older side. In fact, I played when you scored as we were young kids at elementary, middle school, high school, 4 points a try,
points.
not 3 points.
Okay.
So how dare you?
I didn't know it went up one. Okay, I did. Okay, okay. 3, 4, 5, not 3, 5. All right, my fault.
That's
My
right.
fault.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Yeah. So I grew up. So this is interesting. So my mom is a huge sports person. In fact, she is in the Guinness Book of Records in Southern Africa for non-stop tennis. So her and three guys, when they were at university, beat the current record of whatever, I think it was like 23 hours of non-stop tennis. They played 28 hours. So they beat the record and got into the Guinness Book of Records. She played hockey for South Africa, field hockey. My mom swam for provincial. So she was the ultimate sports person. So growing up in that family, my dad loved sports. He played, rugby at a decent level, played a lot of cricket and golf and stuff like that. So I always grew up in the sporting family, and they basically said to me, try everything, play as many sports as you can. So that was cool. So as growing up, I played field hockey. I played cricket. I wasn't a very good swimmer, but I played water polo for like the F team. I also was at a school, it was called Rondebosch Boys High School, that had, 7 teams in each sport at each age group. So I was like, let's say 17. So I played like in the under 18 team for the seventh team for water polo. I played the first team rugby, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
I did hurdles, which is track and field. My dad told me do hurdles because while when I was younger, I was reasonably quick, but as I got older, people just started, burning in the 100 meters, setting records. He said, "Do the hurdles. No one does the hurdles," and it was true. Every time I did it, I won. I won the trophy because there were like three people competing. Two people would fall over, and I'd be the last one in the race. So I'd get the first place.
Goodness. So
Yeah.
you are an all around sports person. What navigated you towards rugby? You were A side. You were F side for water
Yeah.
polo, but A side for rugby. And I know it's if you're an A side in schoolboy rugby or young boy rugby in South Africa, you are a dangerous player. Like what position you play? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. I was kind of like a bit of an oxymoron in that I was really small for like I'm talking about like big time rugby in South Africa. So, but I played in the centers. So I would be going up often, like let's put it in kilograms South Africa. Let's say I was like 80 kilograms, which is whatever 170 pounds.
Yeah.
My opposite number in the center are these Afrikaans farmers who were like 112 kilograms. So they're like, 250 or whatever, So it was giants. But the fascinating thing is, as a young kid growing up, I loved tackling. And so, like, I never forget my very first time. So I grew up in the Western Cape of South Africa. My dad is from the Eastern Cape of South Africa. So we moved there at a young age. So I was, for 3 years at my young schooling level, grew up in the Eastern Cape. And when we came back to the Western Cape, we went to this big school called Rondebosch. So I was normally at a very small school type thing. So now I was at the big school. So he was like, oh, play rugby, even if you don't make the A side, don't worry about it. But my very first trial, the players I was with, they were like, Dallen, you were just running out and tackling. I was on the B side trying out, tackling everyone, like forwards, backs. Like I think two people I sent out injured accidentally because I broke someone's rib, I broke someone's ankle. So it was all about like I'd love to dive at people with my shoulder, obviously lead in, but like as they were looking up to catch the ball, that's when I'd basically hit
Cut
them
him.
as they caught the
Cut
ball.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
cut them in half. So even though I was really small, I used the physics really well. And so the other thing I love too is let's say a big forward be running at you at 100 miles an hour. I'd be waiting in line with the player, and at the last second, I would dip super low, like really like the squat to the lowest you can. And then back then, you were allowed to lift them up, use their momentum, and spear them into the ground and land on them, and then you get the ball from them. So I'd love doing that because who doesn't like smoking somebody with a bigger body shape? So those were the things I loved doing. So back in South Africa, even though I didn't have a chance to make the Springboks, I did well enough in my area because of the physics and the technique. And so, yeah, I absolutely loved it. So what attracted me to rugby? You could run with the ball, you could tackle people, the camaraderie of the sport. I was obsessed with it. When I wasn't playing in a team, I was playing touch rugby with my friends. We had, we still have 20 grass fields that go all the way up at Rondebosch Boys High School. So it was a beautiful setting as a young kid. We'd take bicycles, go play in touch rugby, go back late at night. Yeah, so the game itself, I was obsessed with then. And at Rondebosch, we actually did quick thing. We had a very good team. So let me give you the landscape of rugby there. You had all these English speaking schools. We were one of 5 schools in our neighborhood. So we would have rival schools, one of them as close as 400 meters away. They're Bishops is what their name is. They're a private school. The Rondebosch and Bishops have like 100-year rivalry. So we play home and away. Huge deal. luckily, and if to beat them once was a big deal. If you beat them twice, home and away, that was your team was like cemented in history. We were lucky in our era, we didn't lose to them. So it was, we had a really good first team. We had our captain was is Gubani Boba. He's on Supersport these days as a commentator and analyst. So he was our captain. Anyway, so we had some really good players and a good era that I was lucky enough to play through.
Lucky enough, you're part of the era. You're the reason that era was that good. All right. So you played with a handful of box then at some point.
Yeah, so I played with this exactly. Gomani went on play for the Springboks. Gareth Wright, our fly-half, was the best kicker in the game. He still coaches Western Province and the Stormers. He coaches Mani Labok and all the kickers, which is cool. Hanyani Shamangi, who's one of the main Supersport commentators, he's an analyst role. He was in the front row. But what is cool, I was going to say, and they set this up. So the English schools would play the Afrikaans schools would be, so we have our local rivals who play all the local schools, Sachs, Bishops, Wynberg, and we had a good year, so we won all those games home and away. The real test, though, was us English speakers going to Paarl and going to Stellenbosch and playing all the Afrikaans schools. So, like I said, again, I'm an 18-year-old, weighing 80 kilograms. My opposite number was Maurice Joubert for Paul Chum, which is he was like 112 kilograms. He went on and played for the Springboks. So you're kind of in mismatch, right? So generally you'd go there and lose big. In our year, we played those 4 Afrikaans schools and we beat 3 of them. And the 3 we beat were the first time in 15 years, or the first time in 10 years, or the first time in 12 years. The only school we lost to was ranked number 1 in the country, Paul Jim, with that team, Maurice Ben, all them. So this is what I'm saying. Well, I was fortunate enough to be in a very good year with good players, great coaches. And growing up in South Africa, the games are you have 5,000 people coming to watch your high school rugby game. And so, iconic. I'll never forget those moments. As a player, you'd go there at like 9 in the morning and you'd watch the other teams play, the under 14As, then the under 15As, then the under 16As. Then you get ready for your game and then you run onto that field and it's your time to shine. Wonderful memories.
Goodness. So you're done. You're the second best team in South Africa. I said it that year. One of the leading of the eras, right? English speaking school. And now your rugby career, as far as schoolboy rugby, is
Yeah.
done. You said you went to university and went into marketing,
Yes.
correct?
Exactly. So I took a year out first. I went to England, spent a year there. I coached sport at a school in the southwest of England, beautiful countryside. I kind of wanted to experience before studying at university, just to kind of travel a little bit and see a bit of the world. And that was a life-changing experience. I got to live, on my own in the United Kingdom in a foreign country. Best friend and myself got to travel around Europe for 3 months during the summer. So we got to see a bit more of the world. I played a little bit of rugby and coached a lot, that's where I kind of got into the role of like, okay, the coaches that helped me at Rondebosch, what did I like about every single coach with all the different age groups? And I try to incorporate that into my coaching, right? Because I love the coach that could do, right? So sometimes you see a coach who's really overweight and they're like, you should do this, you should do this. But if they're not already doing it or showing you how to do it, you kind of not convinced.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be able to do and show and coach. And then when I got back, yes, I studied marketing advertising at University of Cape Town and I played rugby there. And that was an eye-opener because all our schools, we merged up and we made one team. So it was cool because all my rivals at school became my best friends. And we played together on the same team. And then we would meet all the Afrikaans schools we played. They played for Stellenbosch. Now, Stellenbosch to this day is the biggest rugby university in the world and produces the most Springboks out of any area. And so we played them. And in our year, we beat them. So it was
You're a
at
legend.
university. And no, it's
You're
not
a
me. No,
legend.
no, it's the team. I'm saying we had a really good culture and a really good team, so that was awesome. We because we had a lot of fun off the field, I'll say that. We enjoyed a few quiet jars, a few quiet drinks. So the camaraderie and chemistry, because we weren't there to just play rugby, we were there to study and do everything else. And we just happened to, one of the guys on our team, Brent Russell, he made the Springboks like that 2 years later, unbelievable nifty fly off. And so then since him, a lot of people started to look at the English speaking players and we got some more players on the thing. But we had some fun times, I tell you what, because we go on a tour to like Stellenbosch, play them, and then afterwards obviously it'll be like 10 hours of mayhem at the bars and stuff like that. It was great times.
Those are the rugby pieces that I think
Yeah,
all of us connect with.
exactly.
I'm glad that there's a bit of that with your history as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So at what point did you come to the States? Because I mean, this is after university.
Yeah.
You spend your time there. You become part of a legendary group at the university. Don't deny yourself.
So I'll tell you one story quickly before I emigrated to the US. So I was there at university for 4 years. So I was lucky enough to captain the under 21 A side. And we went to, we had an unbeaten season. It was the first time in like 30, 40 years. So we had a great year. So we get the trophies for winning that year, and as we get the trophies, we're going to go out in the town and we're going to take these trophies and we're going to go mental. It's like the biggest night of our lives, right? We're 21 years old. I get a tap on the shoulder, and someone's wearing like a suit, and they're like, "Dallen, you and the goes like the vice captain's with me and our kicker." He's like, "If you can bring these trophies up to the university clubhouse, there's a formal event on the go, and we want the trophies to be on display." And I was like, "No, no, no, we're taking these trophies out tonight. We've earned this." The guy goes, "There's free drinks at the bar." We're like, "All right, where's your car? Let's go." So we we jump in, we take these trophies up, and the trophies are, by the way, from like 1896. Each year they have the emblem of who wins and stuff like that. And we hadn't won in, like, as I said, so many years. So we take the trophies up there, and at the event, we didn't realize this. We're at the bar having a few drinks. Is Nick Mallett, the current Springbok rugby coach at the time? So we were like, wow. And he was the guest speaker at this event. So we're having a few drinks, and we're, as I said, students, 21. Everyone's in a red tie. They're like in dresses and tuxedos and everything else, black tie event. And the guy turns to me and my teammate, and he says, "Dallen, I dare you to tackle Nick Mallett. I'll give you like 2 drinks." And I'm like, "Done." So I run across the room at this private formal event, and I dive in the air and I tackle the current Springbok rugby coach, who, by the way, played number 8 for the Springboks. Is a big unit, big guy. Smash into him, knock him over. I fall onto a table. The table collapses. The drinks on the table like crash together. The DJ stops the music, and everyone's like, "What the heck has just happened?" Anyway, so he slaps me on the head, and I'm a small guy, so he pulls me up and he said, "That was close," as in like I didn't hurt him. And then he said, "What are you drinking?" And he found it hilarious, which I thought was good. A story about the university spirit, because he was a UCT former student many years ago,
Okay, okay,
and
okay.
he loved also the side where people enjoy themselves. Rugby obviously can be too serious
Yeah.
at times. So anyway, the reason why that's why I didn't play for the Springboks is what people say.
So you got goaded into tackling the current coach
Exactly. So
over
funny.
two. So you
Yeah.
got 3 extra drinks that
There we
night.
go.
One from the
Three,
coach and two.
exactly. Unlimited drinks. But anyway, I bring it up just to showcase that obviously in South Africa, I had a wonderful time, at university playing rugby and everything else. And then after university, when I finished, I had a friend who was a year, he studied ahead of me. He was in Los Angeles, and he said, "Dallen, come to LA, come and play rugby. I met the team out here. The coach is South African. He went to your high school 10 years before you." And I'm like, "That's really bizarre and really weird. Like, okay, why would they want me to come play rugby there? I'm sure they've got enough players." He said, "No, he's a South African coach. He wants to, get more overseas players into the team." So in 2003, for the very first time ever, I came to America, came to LA, played for the Occidental All Boys in Division Two rugby. I had the time of my life. If someone gave me a job, in cash in hand job. I got an old car to drive around. I got to stay on someone's couch. And so I played 6 months of rugby here in California and had an absolute blast. And that's when the rugby club said, "We want you to come back. We'll get you a proper year and a half visa." And then in that second trip out, the very first day I arrived in the country, and I was going to work at Fox Sports. So they had a rugby channel, and the guy in charge of it was the guy from my rugby club. And he's like, "Dallen, I don't know what you're going to do for us yet, but even if you make coffee or do whatever, I'll sign your paperwork. You're here for a year and a half. You can just learn learn the ropes." And I said, "That's unbelievable." But as I arrived, he says to me, "Dallen, good news and bad news. The good news is your visa's good and valid for the US for a year and a half. The bad news is soccer bought out the rugby channel, so you don't have a job with us anymore." So I was like, "Oh no, well, what do I do now?" And then my rugby coach, a South African guy, says, "Hey, my twin brother just opened up the Springbok Bar and Grill restaurant in Los Angeles, like a few months ago. Go and work there as a server or, a bartender." So I go there. On the first day, I meet my wife. Yes, at the rugby bar. She worked there. She's a student. She picked up a few shifts across the road at some random South African bar. And so I met her, and I said to my sister that night, I said, "I think I met my future wife." And so she's like, "No ways." And then, but my, let's call her wife at the time, she had a boyfriend. So obviously it took a while to negotiate that. And then, but yeah, it's weird how fate and life works out. But it was all because of rugby, the connections and the people.
You took some poor guy's girlfriend and married her, man. Come on, Dallen.
Well, listen, so I mean, but like that's so funny because I didn't. This is the point. I came on like the second time to the US. I wasn't planning to stay, and so that was a remarkable time. Like my life trajectory changed, and because we got married, I got a call after playing. This is quite funny. I played it with Belmont Shaw in the end. Our team Occidental merged with Belmont Shaw. We wanted to compete at a higher level, and Belmont was fantastic. So we went to the Club Sevens Nationals, first time for Belmont Shaw ever, and we played and we did reasonably well. We lost the quarterfinal, and we played in the we won the plate. But at that tournament, Perry Baker was there. And I didn't know this at the time. Perry Baker's there, and I actually have more tries than Perry Baker that tournament, which will never happen again. Obviously, that was the one time we had a good team again. And after that tournament, I got a call from Al Caravelli, who had just started coaching the USA Sevens, and he said, "Dallen, I want you to invite you and a bunch of other people to try out for the USA Sevens team." And I said, "Al, thank you for the call. That's an honor, but you can hear my accent. I'm not American. I'm not eligible." And he said, "No, no, I heard you've been married, and you have been at the time in the country. I'd lived there. I'd lived in the US for 3 years. So that was the rules of the time. So because my wife already had married me, I didn't know that I became eligible for the USA Sevens, and that's how my journey started as the sevens player on the series.
It seems like it's just like living your best life. Hey, dope stuff. Living your
Yes,
best life. Because
yes,
of that before, dope stuff. Like, yeah, like
exactly. 100. Each thing had an effect, and so because a lot of times people ask me, "How did you get into commentating? How can I do it?" And anybody can get into it, no problem. But I just got lucky because my journey was very unique. So the fact that I got to play, like growing up in South Africa, I dreamt of playing for South Africa. Obviously, I wasn't good enough to play for the sevens or the 15s team, and so coming here, I was like, wow, this is a second chance. I get to live that dream to play internationally. I mean, the biggest honor for me was my parents flew out to San Diego because the sevens event was in San Diego back then at Petco Park. They flew out, and my wife's family flew out from the East Coast. They're from Massachusetts. They never met. We were married, and they'd never met. So they met for the first time in San Diego, and they came to watch, me play in for the USA Sevens at that event. It was an amazing dream come true. My parents have since passed, unfortunately, but they got to see me play and in South Africa. I got a chance to fly back to play in the George Sevens. My grandmother, who's alive, my sister, came to watch. So very, very special memories. It was like kind of weird playing against South Africa. Obviously, also I knew some of the players. They were in my university team, and I'm playing against them. So we had a good little rivalry going, but it was a dream come true. And we had, like, I want to say, two or three other South Africans like Matt Hawkins, Ryan Hamilton in our team. We had a few other players who were born in other countries that played for Al Karave's team. I mean, traveling on the series was, unbelievable. Playing against Wasali Sarevi, William Ryder, those players. I mean,
yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. I'm not gonna look up the highlights, and nobody else will neither. We're not gonna look up William Ryder highlights. I have to ask, right? So now we're
Yeah,
talking about you playing for the USA
yeah,
Sevens team. This is before the Olympics, so
yeah,
the
yeah.
eligibility situation was different. But also, you're the man with the gloves. What
Oh
was the
man.
motivation behind the gloves?
Okay, I'll give you the backstory because this is embarrassing. So people will say, like, what's your most embarrassing moment? My most embarrassing moment was wearing the gloves. Now I'll tell you where it came from. My friend, who I lived with in South Africa, he became a Springbok rugby player. He played Sevens World Series. In fact, you look him up, Brent Russell. Scored the most tries in the series when he played in 2002, I think it was, out of anybody. He was electric. But he got sponsored by a glove company and a few other things, and he gave me a bunch of gloves. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was like, I'm not going to wear the gloves. That's so random, right? But then we go on tour and we play in Hong Kong. We go to Singapore and Hong Kong. We play in those events. I've never experienced humidity like that in my life. Like literally sweating to pieces, like so slippery. And I had the gloves packed. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should put the gloves on. So I put them on. Actually, the gloves work pretty well in that environment. I should never have kept them on for other tournaments. But it so happened that it was a black pair of gloves and a white pair of gloves. And we wore a white USA jersey. I was like, oh, the white gloves match the white jersey. I'll wear the black for the blue. Anyway, I wasn't the only one. I will say other players were wearing them around the world at the time. Brian Abana was wearing them.
Yes,
Other players were wearing, yeah.
yes,
So, but
yeah.
again, I feel terrible that I was the one wearing them consistently, even in conditions I didn't need the gloves.
You are known for the gloves. Like it was a whole debacle. We had a whole debacle over the summer going into Club Sevens about people wearing gloves.
Ah,
And I'm
ah,
like, I know there's a USA player that's well known that wore gloves. And I finally remembered it was you. I found a picture. Like, hey, listen, hey, you wearing in the USA
ah.
uniform. It's valid. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
man.
It's valid.
Yeah.
What were some of your biggest memories playing sevens for the USA? I know that's a very unique time, especially as someone from South Africa representing your now home.
Yeah.
What was something that made it unique and made it special that even tied you a little bit more to the United States, not just being married and living
Yeah,
here?
exactly. I will say it's a different thing, right? When you represent, and it's again not my country of birth, but represent your new country that you're living in and you're a part of. I got sworn in as a citizen as well. That was a special ceremony. Like, took great pride in that as well. So, like, I count myself as South African American, right? African American, if you will, because of to countries that I hold dear to my heart. I
Right.
lived in South Africa for 25 years. I've lived in America for 20 years. But I will say, singing the anthem and it's surreal because number one, I didn't expect to play international rugby, and being inside the stadium and huddling together with your teammates, your anthem plays, and you're wearing the jersey, it's pretty remarkable. It really it was special. I'd say moments that stand out for me was the very first time I ran out on the field, and that was at Wellington at the Cape Town. Now I was as a kid, I'd watch New Zealand play South Africa there, on TV or whatever, or I'd watch the Sevens World Series. The Wellington Sevens is famous. They had in Hong Kong they got the South Stand with people drinking. Well, Wellington was everybody was drinking at the whole stadium. So it was amazing to run out to play against players that I admired and watched for many years in the series. I was always by the way, cutting back to South Africa, I was always a massive Sevens fan, even though we only played one tournament a year. So I remember being a young kid playing one event in the year, or being a university playing one tournament, and I loved Sevens. I was like, this game is so much fun. We just didn't do a lot of it. So the fact that I got to play against the really, or all the Kiwis and South Africans like that, truly amazing. And the other part I would say is you're going around the world and you are meeting people that are coming out supporting America or supporting, and there you are, if you do well on the field, it's a good reflection on them. Our era at the time, I will say this, because the Olympic Sevens wasn't announced yet. So I played 2007, 2008, and 2009. The US at the time was just an invite-only team. So we got invited to 3 tournaments, maybe 4 tournaments for the year. But because we did really well in 2007 and 2008, we were invited to be a core team. So in 2009, we played on every one of the 10 stops around the series because we had such good results. A lot of that was because we had players like Todd Clever, Chris Wiles, Takuzu Ngwenya. Taka was amazing, obviously around Brian Banner. So we had a good core group of players that accelerated that program to then eventually becoming a full-time living on-site at Chula Vista, and then those players got a chance to go to the Olympic Games. So, just to be a part of that whole group growing up, yeah, it's been amazing.
So
Yeah.
let's rewind back. Your high school team was the team of an era that you were a part of. Your university side beat teams that they would never have a chance. They didn't beat before. You were a part of. You were with Belmont Shore, their first time ever making it to Club Sevens. You were a part of that. And then you were a part of the USA team that played so well in 2 consecutive seasons where they had limited appearances that they became a core team. And you were a part of that team the first year they were a core team. Correct.
That's right. Yes. Again, I've been so lucky to be
No,
on teams that have been
no,
great
man,
teams, great
no.
teams. No, Lance, and listen, what I will say, looking back on all the things, it really is the chemistry of the group together. And that's the nice thing. Like in the US, we weren't, I was not, I was like, let's say there were 10 scrum offs from other countries. I was like the 11th best, right? But that didn't matter because we played as a group together really well. So that was interesting. While we had breakout players like Kevin Swern, I forgot to mention him, Nessa Malifa, Johnny Nakika, some really good name players. Together, we actually played much better than we would individually. And then part of that is the structure. So you implement a good structure of the game plan. James Walker at Belmont Shore was instrumental, I think, in helping develop culture off the field too, which he did such a good job of. So we would go on like a Belmont Shore tour or a Tiger rugby tour because he formed the Tigers. And what was cool was we were playing against other teams that had unbelievable talent, but individually they played very selfishly. And we would go out on the drinks and and joke and rag on each other, and we had a lot of fun, right? A lot of chirps and a lot of shreds, but that tied us closer together. So when we got onto the field, you would play that much, you'd lift your game. You would tackle anybody you could. You'd put your body on the line. You play that 110%, so that in the end, collectively, you really produced better results than technically on paper you should have produced.
You listen, you are really fighting to be humble, and I'm not going to allow you to do it. I'm not going to allow you to do it. Yeah, structure, you might have been the 11th. I'm not, listen, you were a part of a bunch of teams who outperformed their expectations beforehand. You have to have a bit of control if you're in so many of them. What is it about Dallen being in certain groups with certain people that allows your teams to have success? There has to be a Dallen effect somewhere in here because your teams do well,
Yeah,
right?
well, it's so much fun, right? I think if you have a lot of fun, right, Lance, like you're not necessarily focusing on the results. You're focusing on having a good time and enjoying yourself. I think that is the key. That has been my mantra for the whole life is to have the best time of your life in everything you do. And that's hard sometimes when you're doing things you don't enjoy. So if you can, choose the things that you love. So as a young kid, rugby was something I loved, absolutely loved, because it brought together my friends. We had a great time. We laughed. We enjoyed it. So I think that is carried through my whole life. So the commentary too, like, what are the things? If somebody said, what sets you apart from another commentator? I would probably say my enthusiasm, just enthusiasm in general, for rugby, for life, for telling people stories, for showcasing the game. I think, if you are positive and you keep attracting that, good things keep happening. If you help people out, you're kind, it just exponentially, and this happened in my life. Like we're talking about, every single thing that happened is because somebody was kind to me. I may have returned the favor, and we keep producing good things like that. So I think that's the most important part: being positive in your team setting, being positive in life, and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
You've had these great accomplishments as a player. I want to know, what is it that happened in announcing? Maybe a moment, maybe a call that you made, maybe an event that you worked. What's something about your announcing career that sticks out to you? Maybe the first time you did play-by-play. Maybe the first time you saw a player that you really respected and you got to call one of his tries. One of my favorite calls that you have is Nate going crazy against New Zealand. I believe that's one, right? And I kind of mimicked it to make fun of it, because it was like, but you always have these classical. Somebody even put in the comments earlier, the slippery eel, and these, like, these, what's a call or a moment as an announcer that you really enjoy?
Well, first I want to backtrack, Lance, and say this. Okay, so in the commentary, as a young kid, my grandfather gave me now this is going to date me, right? But again, it wasn't my era; it was his era. Not a VHS tape, but the one before that, called Beta, BE.
Oh,
That
Beta. You had a
Beta.
Betamax?
Betamax, exactly. So that was what the tape was that I put in. Now, he was in the middle of the Orange Free State. It's like in the middle of like a farmland area. So as a young kid, 10-year-old, he put this video in. It was called 101 Try-Line Tales. And in it, it was footage from the UK. So a lot of five nations back then. Some South African highlights, because South Africa during apartheid were banned from playing international rugby, but they would still go on tour and play as like, not under the Springbok umbrella. So, but it was a bunch of brilliant tries. It was domestic rugby as well. But I would listen to all the commentators and I'd be like, wow, that's their passion. It was so cool, and their excitement, different accents, different vocabulary. But what was interesting was most of them would call the name of the person scoring and they've scored a try. That was it. And particularly in South Africa, the commentary was quite dry and quite bland. So me, as being an excitable person, I was like, I can't let that happen. If I'm going to get a chance to commentate, I want to make sure that number one, the players get like the biggest shout out, right? Like the excitement, the energy level is high. If there is something quick to say about them that's going to add value, that's great. If there's a one-liner here and there, not all the time, then that's good. And so that's kind of where I come from. So a lot of people are like, oh, Dallen's trying to be too funny. It's not I'm trying to be too funny. I just don't like it generally if every single try is called Lance gets the ball, he scores, Lance has a try, 5-0. That's a bit too boring, right? So anyway, you asked me for a moment. My biggest moment, I think, coming up was in 2019. My very first biggest moment was getting a chance to commentate the Rugby World Cup 15s alongside Joel Stransky, who, as a kid, when I grew up in South Africa, I remember leaving high school. We would wear uniforms back then, so everybody had the same uniforms. We packed a pair of regular clothes to break out of high school, the classes, run across to Newlands Rugby Ground and watch the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Joel Stransky is the flyer for South Africa. He kicks the winning kick against the All Blacks to win the World Cup, and we're all going wild. That game wasn't in Cape Town, but I watched a bunch of his games. So as a young kid, like, he's the most famous South African rugby player for what he did and united South Africa. And Nelson Mandela, who united South Africans after this terrible segregation of apartheid. So as a young kid, like, that made the biggest impression in my life. And so I knew, I was like, if Nelson Mandela can do that, can bring people together that didn't get on not a decade, like 50 years ago, and now all of a sudden people, like, through sport, are being unified. I would love to be a part of that. So that's why I got into like coaching at Play Rugby USA and working with inner city kids and bringing people together, because rugby's values are what transcends us all and brings community together. Like, if we can agree on other things in sport and life, maybe we agree on other things in our lives. So anyway, I digress there, but all that had a massive impact on me. So cut to 2019 Japan. I'm sitting next to Josh Chansky for a month. We're traveling around Japan together, commentating, 10 different Rugby World Cup games. That was surreal. I pinched myself saying, like, this is like a hero of mine. And here we are. He's the nicest guy ever. We're having beers. We're going for, runs in the park, talking rugby, all that sort of good stuff. And then a moment in the commentary was Kobus Reinach scoring a hat trick for South Africa against Canada, actually. And I had a line prepared, and I hadn't used it. I had it for like a year or two, and I was like, you know what? This moment in time is the best time to use it. He was scoring like his third try or whatever it was, and the excitement and energy was right. So then I dropped in, he's more dangerous than climate change. And so that I felt was the good timing for the good try, for the good moment. And at least I got a chance to, put my stamp on a game by saying, instead of just being Kobus Reinach scores his second try, it at least had something as a statement on it.
He's more dangerous than climate change. Jay Middleton Rugby. Shout out to you.
Oh, Joe, yeah,
Put it,
exactly.
put it
Justin,
in the comments.
Justin, you good thing.
Uh, you do have a unique style of commentary. Is there something that you would want more from working these events, being a part of this part of rugby? Um, and we will talk about this new innovation that you're a part of.
Mm,
But as an announcer, is there things that you kind of hope the game moves to or goes towards? Because you are the voice in the forefront of what a lot of people see. You're a part of that media grab when
mm.
someone sees some highlights, sees a play. Is there something more that you would want to reach for in the lane of announcing and things like
Yeah.
that?
Yes, exactly. So I've been very lucky, again, like in my playing career, to get all these opportunities. I think one thing that I sought out to do was try to cover different leagues, different competitions. So because, as we know, rugby is such a niche market, and to be a rugby commentator in America is the nichest market you can be in. So, I have friends in South Africa that do it full time, and that's great, but there's rugby on every weekend, and there's big rugby on, right? So coming to the US in the broadcasting landscape, like I work with the tens organization, so I do 10 aside. Obviously, I love sevens, so sevens World Series or any other. Like I go to the Algarve every year now in Portugal. We've got a gig there. My wife and I go on holiday for a month. I call a few minor events in England. The Egg Chaser Sevens. I go to the Algarve Sevens in Portugal. So it's wherever I can kind of lend a voice and merge it with travel that we like to do as well. And also it's my career. But then MLR with 15s and anywhere else. So that's kind of like I'm being lucky to as you said, get across different lanes in that way. But one thing I'm really excited about, because when I got into commentary, like I was saying, nobody taught me anything. I didn't go to journalism school. I didn't go to broadcasting school. So next month I'm launching an online commentary rugby broadcasting academy. And so basically that's going to be for new commentators that would like to learn about play-by-play role, the analyst role, sideline role, and I want to share what I learned from. And by the way, all I learned was from the best commentators in the world. So it's not something I did. I learned from them. I would be at a Sevens World Series or Rugby World Cup, and I'd be like, "Jeepers, I love this commentator. How do they do it?" And then I see their prep. Then I see how they sound, the words they use, like their intonations, things like that. So I've learned a ton from all these unbelievable legends. I'd like to share that with the next generation of commentary, because equally important, while rugby, the level's improving drastically in America. We've got professional women's 15s, professional men's 15s, sevens teams are doing really well. We need the voices to match that, right? We need the voices to be excitable, to be knowledgeable, and that sort of stuff about the game. So I'm excited. That's going to be part of my next project.
It's crazy you say that, right?
Yeah.
Because we end up working a game together at Freetail like
Yes.
2020 through like 2022
Yeah.
New Year, going into New Year. And I had just got into commentary in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know how to prepare.
Right.
I just give me a roster list.
Yeah.
We're gonna figure this
Yeah.
thing out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I seen you guys in the back, like, all right, what number is that person wearing?
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do you pronounce that name? And watching you all go, and I mean, this is painstaking work. You guys
Yeah.
spent like a half an hour,
Yeah.
and that was before I got there. Y'all probably did more. Y'all been doing a lot
Yeah.
of things to kind of get that. That taught me something, right? And obviously, like working with Wendy Young and all the other people, but
Yeah.
actually seeing you guys like figure that part out really showed me that it's a whole new world that I haven't. So this
Yeah.
academy that I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
can't wait.
and
That'll be awesome. Yeah.
exactly. And last, just to touch on that, for example, like MLR this weekend, I got 2 games. So I've spent 4 days preparing for the 1 2 hour game. Okay, so in those 4 days, I basically have a bio, and I think, I don't know if that's Chase Shaw-Haskin, one of the players in here, right, from Miami.
Yeah.
But prepare bio on all 23 players, which includes like, obviously their rugby resume and stuff I can scrounge online. Who, if they're married to somebody, do they have any kids? Are they going to be there on the weekend? Like that sort of stuff. That's detailed. Then it's obviously on the other team. So both teams, the referee, the stadium, the history between the sides, generic information about MLR, where we are in the season. So I have literally 6 pages of legal sheets, so not just regular sheets, legal sheets of paper that are in front of me when the game's on. And that's how I feel like I'm prepared now. because I have all that. Without that, I would feel naked and wouldn't be ready to call a game. I'd be very nervous. You see, so
And
the preparation is key. Yeah.
and the contrast is, I think that would be too much. Like, I'm so young in it, that would be too much information for me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's levels to it.
yeah,
But also one of the things, well, not also,
yeah.
transitioning. One of the things that you have been championing
Mm.
that I've seen, I even had the opportunity to referee it and
Yes,
play it.
yes,
Right? TagX.
yeah.
Where did this, is this your brainchild? Like, where did this come about? How did it? Yeah.
Exactly. So TagX is a TagX International is a company from Australia. I got introduced to them about 5 years ago, and they were like, we have this innovative game that we're doing. We're also using this game not just to upskill people, but to connect alumni and ex-players or people that don't want to play tackle back to the game of rugby. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting concept. They also said this can be used as a fundraising tool for rugby clubs. And that got my attention because I know playing in America, there's minimal money going around. People pay their dues, but we're always short. If we need to travel, we need kit, we need to do whatever, there's no money for that, unless you have a wealthy donor, which is rare as well. So that got me thinking. I was like, okay, well, why this game? Like, I can just, because I play touch every week in Santa Monica on the beach. I love it. Great community, great vibe. It's free. So, but then I was like, oh, okay, I do know what they're saying, because I remember being in South Africa when I was playing at university level. We would train on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, but on Wednesday night we would go to a rival club that were doing six touch. So similar game to what Flag X is. We call it Flag X, by the way, because in America, flag football is famous, obviously. So flag is the name of the game. But I would pay to play with my team, with friends. We'd play on a Wednesday night, just six touch, with a fun group of people. After to sink a few beers, it was very much a social setting. But we paid to play for rugby because it was a great time. So this is the same concept. The game itself is cool. 7 attackers against 6 defenders. So there's more space to attack. You can kick at any point in time to advance your attack. So it's not a kick for touch or territory. I'm chip kicking for the wing or grubber kicking for myself in the game, which is cool because all touch I've played, there's no kicking allowed. So this is really cool. So, and you played it. In fact, you have a brilliant try where you kick along the ground. Cue the footage.
So I used to. I'm nice. No biggie.
And yeah, so basically 5 years ago, I got in touch with a group out of Australia. They flew me out there, so I got to meet with them, see what the game was. The game's obviously exploded in their area of Australia, where rugby, by the way, is not a number one sport in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sport number 4 or 5 because they've got so
Yeah.
many other ones.
Yeah.
But in Brisbane, in this area where they're based, thousands of women and men and young girls and boys were playing their version, which is called OzTag or TagX. And I was astounded. I went to an event with 3,000 people, everyone playing this game, and they loved it. And I was like, that's a really cool thing. So that's why Perry Baker and myself, I wanted Perry involved because I knew he'd be coming to the end of his career, and he's such an ambassador for the sport. I admire him so much as a player and a person. So it's really cool to link up with him and promote this game here in the US. So we've sent basically kit bags, free kit bags, which have the flag belts, the equipment, the cones, the balls, to about 30 clubs so far in the US. And these are men's and women's college campuses and rugby clubs as well. We just partnered with NCR, which have over 600 colleges. So now I've been on calls with them, Zoom calls, running through the game, how it works, sending videos, and we have another 50 bags, which are going to go out in the next little while. So this game is exploding, it's growing. I know it's in your neck of the woods as well, but the whole goal for this is to get more people playing rugby, to get perhaps people that are nervous to go to tackle straight away, get them into the game to try and experience it, to see how it feels for them, to get alumni back into the game that would pay to play in a tournament that is put on by the rugby club. So no players that are currently with the rugby club will have to pay. They are refereeing it, they're organising it, where the alumni come and put their money in, knowing that the money is going to go back to the club. We take a tiny fee as FlagX, TagX International, and the rest stays with the club. So it's the ecosystem keeps everybody involved. So that's kind of what we're doing. Very excited about it. The groups from Australia is coming out again. They were here. We were in San Diego and LA last time, but now they're going to do like a bit of a road trip. So we're hopefully going to come to Miami. We're going to go, to Texas. Yes, we're going to go to New York. We're going to meet with Steve Lewis in New York. We're going to kind of go all over. And they're going to be here, I want to say May, June, or let's see, I'm in Europe. So yeah, end of May, June type period as we go big.
Um, the game
Yeah.
is fun, right?
Yeah. What do you like? What did you like about the game? Yeah.
The kicking,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
play. I play touch. International touch.
Yeah.
If you
Exactly.
touch, you're down. Like, I hate that, right? To be able to actually
Yeah.
attack, have a man advantage,
Yeah.
to always have an advantage is nice.
Yeah.
And defensively, to always have the stress of we're down
Yeah.
a player, so there's a
Yes.
hustle element. But the kicking, Like,
Mm.
you've
Yeah.
seen the work, no biggie. But
I was impressed,
it
by the way. I was impressed with your skill level because just to keep it alive, bouncing up, catching,
you
scoring.
know.
I mean, sleek
I got
sensation,
I
you.
got lucky. Hold on. Let me get a Dallen answer. I've been blessed and lucky to get the bounce. No, I'm joking. I the game
Yeah.
itself, it teaches
Yeah.
principles that I believe are really important for younger people.
Mm.
Like a 16-year-old just starting to play rugby
Yeah.
can really learn a lot from playing TagX, right?
Exactly.
Maybe me at my advanced age, can have a little fun, but there's elements in it that you can really incorporate and learn
Yeah.
from. So that's really what I enjoyed about it. And I got to referee it too.
Yes.
That's the cooler part too. Like refereeing it is pretty fun because if you up
Exactly.
the tempo, it can really become a game of
Really
So
fast
I
as
yeah.
well. And what I love about it too, in a safe way, you can have men and women playing together, boys and girls playing together, and I think that's so fantastic. So technically, like when I was in Australia, there were different divisions, and what I mean by divisions, they had like just women playing in a 4-team tournament. Then they had just men. Then they had co-ed, so mixed together playing in a competition as well. So the possibilities are endless, which I think is great. And think about it, a rugby club generally is like a women's club or a men's club, so it's kind of nice to bring everybody together in a form of super fun way to do it, not just
Yeah.
for like once a year. You can do it regularly as well, raise money for your club. You can pay for your coach through that as well, which I think is great because a lot of people volunteer their time. That's what I noticed about America, which is amazing. So many people volunteer their time in rugby. If more people can earn some sort of income from it, or a stipend or whatever it is, that's good because they spend so much time and energy on the game. They need to be financially rewarded, not just as a hobby as well, which I think is important.
I do have a few
Yeah,
questions about the line that you said that about the landscape of rugby in the United
yeah,
States. I think you have a very unique position, right? You grew up in another
mm,
system, came here, was able to have success in this system, able to learn from it, and now you're an ambassador for it in a lot of ways.
yeah,
As a country, as a nation, as
mm,
massive as the USA is, which creates so many of its own
yeah,
problems, what are some ways that this nation can improve our rugby? I know we're taking the steps, like you said, pro women's, pro
yeah.
men's, sevens doing well, but what are some of the things this nation can do to improve its rugby? From Dallen.
Well, that's a great question. I think it's interesting. 20 years ago when I came here, the landscape looked very different. The opportunities were limited. So I think as opportunities arise for more people to play at a higher level, more people to play international rugby or go on tours, there are so many organizations doing wonderful work. I think we've all grown tremendously. We forget 20 years ago, a lot of these things didn't exist. So to be paid to play rugby in America didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. So I was paid $100 a day to play sevens for the USA, $100. I could have gone to work in a restaurant and earn more money, right? But I love the sport and that sort of stuff. Now the players, are camped out in Chula Vista, or they're playing for MLR sides, or the Women's Professional League, which is starting now. So those things are great. What I do urge people is, in your community, do what you can to help promote the game. Whether it's as simple as taking 5 friends to a rugby game like you are to go watch in Miami, or bring people into the circle of rugby because we are so passionate about it. But people that don't know rugby, they don't know why we're mad about it. They're like, well, what do you mean the values? Like, what are these values you talk about? Well, it's difficult to tell people about it. You need to show them. They need to come to a rugby game and look at it and go, whoa, that was intense. That was really cool. Why are the players hugging each other afterwards and now having a meal together? That's unusual. I'm not used to that from football or whatever sport. So I think we need to bring more people into the game. And I think that's an interesting one. Alona Mars obviously doing that at the highest level. But if we can, in our small communities, just build and keep improving, as we keep rising this game. There's no one quick fix. There's no, a lot of people say US Rugby should be doing this or doing that. Yeah, sure, they're the national body, but they've got their hands full. There's so many things on the go. So one thing I will say is, whatever you can do in your domain, whether it's supporting youth rugby in your area, being a coach, volunteering, all this sort of stuff, do what you can, or even just flag X, promote a non-contact game, get a team together, play, have some fun, try the game out as well. I think all of us can make a big difference in a country like the US, where people are passionate about the sport.
It's a great American rugby tradition to give thanks and gratitude to those who helped you on your rugby journey. Dallen, look into the camera, show some love.
Well, I'm my friend. So I want to go back to my roots. Growing up in South Africa at Ronwish Boys High School, Mike Orban was one of my coaches. He was super funny teacher, amazing rugby coach. He was enthusiastic about life. He's somebody I basically looked up to, introduced me to a lot of the skills of the game. He's definitely a coach I want to thank. Brendan Fogarty at university, again, somebody who could get the culture off the field right. Such a funny guy. I gravitate towards people that make people laugh, and he had all that. He's still around today. So shout out to Fogs. And then James Walker. James Walker really helped me on my journey in America. Not only to, get me set up as well, but as a rugby coach, he really did such an amazing job bringing personalities and people together to get results on the field. And Patrick Guthrie in my broadcasting career has been phenomenal to help me to where I am to this day. And then just shout out to other folks that I've worked with, like Brian Visit, like the first person I got to work with who helped me as well as a commentator. And we obviously keep in touch and still work on big events together and stuff like that. So there's so many people. I've got to thank my wife, obviously my missus. Without her, I wouldn't obviously be here in the US. She's been amazing and so supportive about this journey that has taken me around the globe. And in fact, her first game was Ireland, New Zealand, 2016. That was the first live rugby game for 15s that she saw. So we'll be going back to Chicago together to look at that game, So definitely shout out to the missus.
And shout out to you, man. I before we end, I know that you're a busy man. I know life is lifing for you. I want to say that it's a very unique thing to have people from other countries come to the United States. In a lot of ways, I've seen people who come to the United States and they take a lot. They take advantage of the opportunities, but at no point do they actually give anything back. I think that you might not feel this way, but being the voice of big games, MLR games, us hearing you speak the action that's in front of us does a lot for us as a rugby community. You need people to hold a staple point inside of the sport. And for you to hold the microphone and call out, these amazing calls, more dangerous than climate change, the slippery eel, the crazy, most people say you're funny, right? And in order to do any of this work, especially in sports, you got to be entertaining. You definitely are that. So I do appreciate you stopping by and sharing your great American rugby story with us. I can't wait to see how this season progresses. MLR. I don't know how we're gonna beat the first week that we had as far as drama, but it's great talking to you. Before we leave, before we go, I usually give the floor to my guests. Is there anything you want to share with the world? Say to the world anything on your mind before we head off?
Well, firstly, I want to thank you, Lance, for what you do, and I really appreciate the kind words. That's really special, coming from yourself. That is obviously so entrenched in the American rugby landscape. I love what you do. I love how you get out there amongst it. And even when you're playing TagX, I was like, man, this guy can do it all. You are, more dangerous than climate change, or Freddy Krueger will not have nightmares about you. Lance, the final thing I just want to say, like echo what I said earlier. Anybody in the US that loves the sport of rugby, just continue to shine the light on the game in a positive way. Try work, with anybody in the community you can to keep growing the game, because I will say I've seen some very special moments in my time. Some of them was with Play Rugby USA, where young girls who had never played a team sport tried flag rugby. They loved it so much that they all of a sudden had a different aura about them. Their parents would come to me and say, they're so confident now, they've made new friends. They want to go to university and play rugby. I was like, wow, that's so cool. It gives people opportunities. So, rugby has an opportunity to change your life, and basically for the positive. Stick with it, and thank you for everything you do, my friend. It's honestly been a blessed journey.
Thank you so much, Dallen. Everyone, Dallen Stanford, the voice of rugby here in the United States. So much more to go with MLR, World Rugby work ahead of you. Rugby Championship 10s, so much more to go. I appreciate you stopping by and sharing your story. You be blessed, and I hope to hear from you soon, brother.
Thank you, my friend. Keep well, you star. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.